All right, we're back again with the tracker, the big tracker exactly. What are we going to do with this thing? Well, as the title states, we got to replace an oil pump. Why is that? Well, because as this thing runs and it warms up, every now and then the oil pressure light will flicker on and off. Now, while one might have said immediately check the sensor before you go to such extremes, there are instances where the valve train will make some little rattly sounds real quickly. Not long enough to really get alarmed, but enough so to let you know that there are times that oil is lacking up there. And then, of course, when the thing initially starts up, we get a little bit of rattle right off the line until things really get primed up good enough to move oil like it needs to. But whatever the case is, I'd rather go for the extreme approach and change the oil pump out, because we don't need to frag this engine, because, well, I don't feel like building an engine, much less trying to source one of these things. So to actually do this job, if you've seen the video changing the oil pan gasket, it's pretty much going to be that plus more. So we're going to skip the whole process of dropping the oil pan. If you want to know about dropping the oil pan, check that video out. Pretty simple procedure. Obviously, you got to jack the engine up high enough to allow the pan to clear. You got a couple of nuts right here on the mounting brackets. Let me zoom in on that. On these mounting brackets, I already relieved the things of their nuts, and you got to jack the engine up high enough to really get some clearance underneath. Another thing you also got to make note of is taking this power steering reservoir bottle off its bracket right here, so when the engine comes up, it doesn't snatch this hose out and leave you with a hot mess underneath. But once you jack the engine up, put some blocks or something underneath the brackets where they would have sat on the motor mounts, so it'll hold the engine up, and get your jack out of the way, get the bolts off of the oil pan, and work the oil pan down and out from under the body, and then you can get to work on that. So let me go ahead and get the pan down. Stand by. All right, to make note of one little thing here when it comes to pulling the pan down, important, you're gonna have to pull the pickup tube off the oil pump before you can actually get the pan all the way down, because, well, the tube snakes around and the pickup thing goes into the sump area right here, and with all that in the way, you're not getting this thing down. But all is not lost, because it's just two 10mm bolts that are easily accessible on either side. Just maneuver the pan, like right here. I got the pan pulled down enough to where I could get my socket wrench in here to get that bolt off, and then I'll do the same on the opposite side. So give me a quick second. Got an angle from the right side here just to show how easy it is to move the pan around. So let me get back over here to the left side, get this thing situated here, and hold on, I think we got one more bolt we got to remove. Give me a second. We're on the right side here. Just move the pan around to show just how much space you have to be able to move it around and get in here as needed. But besides the two 10 mils on the pump itself, you also have one right here holding this little bracket. You got to pull that off too, so all this will be free. So give me one more second. All right, with everything loose, now able to get our oil pickup tube out of here. Try not to make too much of a mess on myself here. There we go. Got our oil pickup tube free and clear. Set that aside for later. So now we can finally get our pan down as needed. But I'm gonna need two hands, so let me get this thing all the way out. Stand by. All right, here's our oil pump. Simple thing, easy to come out. In fact, it's only 3 bolts holding the whole unit in place. Got a bolt right here, and another bolt right there. All 3 of them are 13mm. Another thing that'll have to come off is this chain shield right here, and that's held by some 10mm bolts. Two of them right here, and there's a couple of them kind of underneath. See if I could see this from this angle right here. Yeah, right there. There, 1, 2. So those bolts got to come off, get this shield off, and that'll expose our drive chain. That's right here. There's a little slack in that chain there, obviously being a high mileage engine, but that's not a timing chain, so there's no worry about jacking up the timing when you remove this oil pump. That's just an intermediate chain just for the oil pump. The timing chain is forward of that in the front there. So when the bolts are all pulled off, this thing should just pop out and just work itself free out of the chain, quick and easy, and installation would be reverse of that. First thing, let me get this chain guard off. Got our chain guard off. Had to use a 1/4-inch drive setup here with a short extension to get to those forward 2 bolts, because they're actually, I mean, you got to kind of get up over this rack and pinion to get in there, so just make a note of having a good set of extensions on hand. But yep, our chain is all open right here, and go ahead and get this get these 3 bolts off and get this thing out of here. So stand by again. All right, we got our 3 bolts off. They're actually 12mm. So reiterating, 12mm bolts. The 3 bolts holding the pump on, 12mm. Remember that, folks, 12mm. Anyway, pulling the pump down, yeah, I already had a hot mess fall on my arm here, but whatever. But and here comes some more. Let me let that do its thing right there and stand out of the way. Okay, as I stated before, because of the nature of the chain and everything, this thing comes out pretty easy. Come out of here with this thing. This thing actually has some it's kind of not resistant. Get down there. It's kind of not resistant. It's pretty smooth moving. So let's look at our new crap. All right, we got our 2 oil pumps right here. As you can clearly see, they're matching units, as they should be. But this is our new unit. Has a little more resistance in it. Even after I put some oil in there to get it loosened up, it still feels like it's got a little more tightness to it than this unit here. Now, even when I drained the oil out of there, there was metallic crap in there, which would be indicative of, well, the engine slowly digesting itself. But either way it goes, we're going to be putting that unit in, and that one can go bye-bye. So yeah, we'll go ahead and slip this thing back in place. Stand by. All right, we got our oil pump mounted, but I still need to torque down those 12mm bolts. Specs say, from what I found, that these bolts go down to 18 foot-pounds. So we got a torque wrench right here with a reducer adapter. Probably going to have to put a extension on here because, well, as you can clearly see, this large tool and getting up in here could be a little bit problematic, but we'll see in a second if I could get up in here. Give me a quick second. Yeah, I was wrong. It really wasn't that bad to get up in here. With all the space available, I was able to get our torque wrench in place and snug our 3 bolts down to 18 foot-pounds again. So with that in mind, go ahead, get this out of the way, and we could go ahead and put our chain guard back on here just as well. So let's do that real quick. Okay, we have our chain shield guide thingy back on. These little bolts here are stated to be torqued down to 8 foot-pounds. A little bit of a pain in the butt, and I already know I snugged them way past 8 foot-pounds, so we're not going to put the torque wrench on that. But just for reference, if you are one to make sure everything is torqued properly, These 4 bolts are 8 foot-pounds. So now we got our oil pump in, everything is snugged down. We can go ahead and look at our oil pickup tube. And if we could focus, here we go. Looking at our oil pickup tube, it is not clogged up in any way, shape, or form as far as heavy deposits that might cause the thing to not draw up enough oil. Looking at it, I mean, there's only one little speck of crap right there, but otherwise the screen is rather clean. You know, you could actually see the little inner portion of the tube through that. So confident enough this pickup is good and still ready to rock and roll. So what we're going to need to do before we put this back on is replace our valve cover gasket, which, because we've already covered that before, I will spare you the boredom of listening to me talk about putting an oil pan gasket on a second time. So I'm going to clean this garbage up and glue another gasket down and get the pan back up there, which involves putting this on almost at the same time as I'm putting the pan up. So give me a quick minute. All right, we have our pan in position with the gasket glued on one side. Mistake I made the first time. I should have just glued it on one side and I would have probably preserved the first one. But gasket is on the pan. We put our oil pickup tube back on, the 2 10mm bolts on the oil pump and the 10mm on the bracket. All that stuff is snugged down. Don't have the exact torque specs, but I'm sure I snugged them down plenty enough to go above the torque specs. So with that all said and done, go ahead and get this pan mounted up and get this thing off our blocks, back on the mounts, and fill this thing up with oil. Stand by. All right, got our engine running. Doesn't sound like a diesel, so that means the valve train's getting plenty of oil. And that goes for everything else too, for that matter. We're down to about a normal idle at this rate. And normally when this thing wanted to start throwing on that oil light, it would be around the idle point, 1,000 RPM give or take. And so far we aren't getting any kind of oil light. So I would say the engine is getting lubricated as it's supposed to. So, yep, our oil pump is doing its job, hopefully to prolong the life of this engine just a little while longer. So, with that, we're going to conclude this video and this oil pump job and move on to bigger and better things. So, till the next time, as usual, like, subscribe, notifications, TikTok, all that good stuff. And stay tuned for more car stuff, because there's going to be more car stuff. So I'll catch you later. I'm out.